Rishi Khanna, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
I'm excited as well. This is a long time coming. I thought I'll be on your podcast 10 years ago. It just took 10 years to make it happen.
Well, this podcast is 10 years in the making. Full disclosure, Rishi and I have known each other for at least a decade, if not a lot longer. You were there at the beginning of when I launched Paper Napkin Wisdom. I know we've talked about it many times, and I don't know why. It didn't happen until now, but I'm grateful that it's happening now. So welcome. You shared an incredible paper napkin with me, and I know we're going to have a rich conversation. It has a number of equations on it, let's call it. So it says quiet time equals clarity, clarity equals confidence, confidence equals outcomes, new habits equals new results, self-reflection equals self-mastery. Why did you share that with me?
Well, that's sort of my framework for myself. I realized that, just can't live life by default and just sort of live by whatever's thrown at you every day. I needed to create some intentions and clarity around my life and live life by design and rather than by default. So that was led to this sort of framework for myself, just to remind me that in order for me to get anywhere, I got to have self-mastery. And self-mastery means I need to have self-reflection. So it really boils down to the last equation. That's where the entire thing happens. So then I can really, what I didn't write there is all that then leads to happiness.
Happiness is an outcome. But
Yeah,
so you built this model, this framework, you called it, because you were in search of self-mastery,
that's
right?
right.
So what did it look like before you had this model? Like what was life like before that?
So life before that was, yeah, I mean, there was some level of direction, it was more business oriented. There was no personal purpose around it. Honestly, I got more intentional about my life, fairly early because I got some early successes and I realized I was not getting any happiness from the successes. I was feeling that, hey, you know what? Okay, I got a big company started. I got my few customers. I got some revenue going. Now what, right? And I was like, hey, I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied. And that void got me constantly like questioning, hey, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right space? Should I be in business? Should I be doing something else? And those questions constantly, I started questioning myself over, led me to realize that there was more to life than just building a business and just paying bills, right? So and that quest got me to this thing about purpose. Hey, what is my purpose? What am I here for? I mean, why was I even brought into this earth? And if I were to die tomorrow, what would that look like for me? Hey, what should I have achieved in that time frame to say, hey, you know what, I had a fulfilled life? And so I started sort of going in that direction very early. And then, 25 years later, I mean, I've been in business 25 years and here I am. I feel I don't think I still mastered myself, but I think there's more clarity around it. And I feel that a lot of people achieve this, I mean, I think people are a lot more intentional today in this world, but in the good old, I would just say, previous generations, they probably would achieve this sort of mastery at the age of 70. I wish I had this understanding, and I wish this was taught, or maybe some level of coaching was provided to me early on in my life. I would have been here a lot faster. So I think this is internal quest of searching and trying to figure out who I am and why do I exist and what's my purpose, and am I what happiness means to me.
And what I think is really interesting is you talked about is like, success is usually this warm blanket that makes everything feel better, but you achieved what you thought your end goal was, and then looked around and said, "Wait a minute, this
Yeah,
doesn't feel right." Right?
yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that, I mean, a lot of people go through that early successes, right? I mean, they think material goods and material things are going to bring happiness to you. So when I went and bought my first car, I went and bought a Mercedes. I was like, hey, Mercedes is going to make me happy. And then I said, no. 6 months later, I swapped it for a BMW. I said, maybe the BMW will make me happy. And I realized, you know what? None of that brings happiness. And I figured out that none of that matters at grand scheme of things. And then that's where it all started, right? So really, it's everyone goes through some level of understanding of that, and yeah. So yeah, here's my journey so far.
All right. So why did that start with quiet time? Like, why does your framework start with quiet time? I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm a go and a go-getter always. I cannot sit. I mean, I'm ADD. I cannot sit, and sort of do
You're not
nothing.
sitting now. So
I'm standing right now too, but I just can't sit still. And so I realized that I used to think that go, constantly on the move, trying to achieve big things, constantly like, talking a big language, whatever, all that makes life, become better. And then I realized, no, I get more satisfaction just being still. I get more satisfaction just being quiet, and I love meditation, right? I started going into this whole element of seeing that noise does not help you get clarity. It's actually the stillness that gets you clarity, right? And so, but it was a long journey to get there, right? Because I felt that go was the way to do it.
so so you learned meditation so
Mhm.
that you could learn to be quiet, learn to create some quiet
Yeah,
time for yourself.
yeah.
What was the outcome of that quiet time?
Well, when you go still, and I'll give you an analogy of being on a massage table, right? You're still. A lot of people get massages and have AirPods in there, and they're listening to a book or a podcast or what have you. I realized that's where it started. Is like I realized that when I'm on a massage table and I have nothing going on, there's a lot of self-talk. There's a whole lot of, right? There's a whole lot of mental processing happening. You're not really still, even though you're physically still, you're mentally always on the move, right? And those kind of things allowed you to distill, hey, what's bothering me? What's going through my mind? And those kind of questions that you start asking yourself leads to, hey, you know what? I need to deal with these issues, right? And the quiet time allows me to understand and I would say, comprehend the noise. It also helps me, it also helps me, I would just say, process the information around me. Otherwise, I just can't process. I think I'm more reactive when I'm not still. I'm more responsive and more deliberate when I'm actually still.
What's interesting to me is that you're talking about, some really significant self-awareness, right? You noticed that when you got the success, the material wealth wasn't bringing you happiness. I mean, it was probably deflating a little bit, right? But you took the time to notice how you felt and how it was not the outcome that you were expecting, and then you got curious about, what you could do to possibly change it. And I thought it's also interesting in a similar way that while you're lying still on a massage table or in an environment like that, you noticed that
Mhm.
you're not really still, that you're
Yeah.
still sort of iterating really quickly, going through things really quickly. Did you always have that sort of like inquisitive, self-curious nature, or is that something you learned along the way? Are you leaning into a strength is really what I'm asking you.
I think I've been curious in general, right? The thing is, I think I was avoiding my curiosity. I was sort of ignoring my thinking and just focus on doing and executing, right? And I realized there is some value that lies in processing the thinking itself, right? And so I didn't see the value of it growing up. I only saw the value of it when I started my business and I started to experience this element of dissatisfaction and we call it deflation or just unhappiness. I just didn't see happiness from any of that effort.
Yeah. So okay, the quiet time you said then in this equation on your napkin equated clarity for you, right?
Yeah.
Clarity on not necessarily clarity on a decision or an outcome, but
Mhm.
clarity on what you were thinking and feeling, how you're perceiving what was happening for you, right? Is that what I'm
Right.
understanding correctly?
That's
Okay,
right.
so and why was clarity so important for you to achieve? Because it led to something else, right?
It did lead to something else. It led to, hey, dreaming and manifesting a life beyond where I am. So it got clarity towards what I was sort of working towards. right? Because that's what was needed, because there was a lot of noise. I'm distilling it. But now, once I have clarity, then I can put some guardrails around it, now dream better and be more focused into the world that is going to give me that element of satisfaction and happiness. So becoming more intentional in my mind and driving and be more, yeah, be more clear about the future. And that created a lot of um, that's where the decisions came in of saying no to things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's so clear, right? Like when we don't have clarity, we don't know what to say no to because we're
Right.
not really clear on what we've said yes to either, right? And that
Right.
like
Yeah.
every great yes is defended by 1,000 no's, but if we
Right.
don't know what we're agreeing to and we're just going and you said this really well, like you were focused on doing, you're just doing the next thing and doing the next thing on the list and taking care of the to do and but when you're clear on what you're saying yes to, you get super clear. You give yourself the ability to say no to the things that um, you need to say no to defend your yes, right?
That's right. Yeah. So it becomes a lot clearer to say no to things because you said the guardrails and then you make the main thing, right? Because then you figure out what the main thing is. Because
Right.
until that point, it's just noise. It's no main thing in your mind.
Yeah, and that's incredible. So when you know what the main thing you get, and again, on your napkin, you get confidence, right? So you have you're clear, you're confident on what you need to do next,
Right.
and I think that's really powerful. I want to go back also. There's I don't know if you've ever heard this, but there's talk about, when people are practicing in an athletic sense, that it's
Mhm.
important to rest between repetitions of the practice, and there's value in the rest between the repetitions, whether
Mhm.
that's if you're on a sports team like a hockey team or a football team or whatever, and everybody's doing repetitions on patterns or routes or whatever. Whatever it is, whether it's lifting weights or it's important to have that rest because what happens in that rest period in between reps is your brain actually iterates over and over and over and practices the routine or the rep millions of times between
Mhm.
when you do it once and you do it the second time.
That's
So that
right.
rest between reps is really important. What it sounds like you did was use that rest between reps, that meditation, that quiet time, that clarity to do those reps and gain that confidence, gain that clarity. Is that another way of thinking about it? Is that what you achieved?
That is correct. Yeah. And the rep is also the reps that we go through and the rest time they go through is really allows you to repair, you
Repair,
know.
yeah, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Reflect and repair. Those are the kind of things you can achieve.
All right. So once you know the main thing, you've got the thing that you can say yes to, which means you can defend it with 1,000 no's. You've got the confidence. You say that's where the outcomes start to come, right?
That's right. That's the first step. That's an early step. Now it gets to direction.
Okay. So
So
tell me about
when
that.
you get the main thing and you start saying no to stuff, then you now know what you are intentionally working towards, and now you can actually create an action plan.
Okay.
You know,
So
so
what does
now
that
you can
look
start
like?
planning.
What does that look like for you?
So, for me, it's actually I do a lot of journaling and I journal a lot of stuff and I put together the plan every year for what I want to do, get intentional about quarterly goals and those kind of things like everybody else does to some degree, and that basically allows me to start writing, and writing makes it real, documenting it down and putting on a piece of paper makes that goal something that I want to now achieve, right? It writing also helps you reflect, right?
Right.
It forces you to reflect, and then you also adjust, and you also figure out how any of this resonates with the direction you're trying to go, and then you also identify things you want to say no to as you're writing. Oh, no, that's not what I want, and then you delete that and you write it again. So writing is a very important aspect of that.
Yeah,
Right.
so I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Dr. Jim Lair. He talks about writing out your story, right? In Human Performance Labs, he talks about how you can even rewrite your story by
Right.
writing it out. So I find it really fascinating that you write that out in it, and I think you write it out in some detail, right? To be able to be very clear. What if what if when you're writing something, you realize, you know what, I don't understand this well enough. What do you do about that? Well, you know, sometimes we run into these roadblocks.
Yeah, so I mean, there's this, so the framework for me is during the quiet time, and I quiet time actually is actually a think week. It's not a quiet time for 5 minutes. It's not a quiet time for 10 minutes. It's not a massage. It's actually a whole week. I'm actually in a quiet time. I'm away from work. I'm away from family. I'm parking myself in a hotel room or a Airbnb somewhere around the world, and I am just basically taking the quiet time to not have anything that's going to distract me from it. So that's the think week. And during the think week, I have quiet time. Actually, I have two frameworks. One I call the main framework, and the other one I call a dream framework. To make sure the main thing becomes the main thing, and dream allows me to get to my dream. So that's the framework I do, and I fill up a thing which is a journal, and that's my life planner, right? This is my personal life planner, which I also give it out to my team members. And so I fill this up every year, and then I have a plan. So that's what I do in the quiet time. Quiet time is also closing your eyes and meditating, but also documenting and journaling and just getting clear. And during that time, within my dream framework, it's also about adapting the disciplines, routines, education, like things that I don't know about. How do I educate myself on it? How do I get better at it? And maybe maybe education means, hey, who's the expert that I need to go after? Right? I need to get education from someone else who's already done it. And so how do I find the dream manager who's helped me get there? And then how do I create an action step? And then how do I create a mindset around that thinking? So be able to get there. So that's the framework that I use, is the dream and the main framework to get my quiet time to create meaningful clarity.
All right, so Rishi, let me push back a second because somewhere out there, someone's listening and they're saying, okay, well, this is all really great for Rishi because he had success. He had the Mercedes and the BMW, and then he took the week, and yeah, great. But I'm pushing an elephant up a hill, and I'm overwhelmed. I
Mhm.
don't have a week to go and travel and book an Airbnb and blah blah blah. What would you say to that entrepreneur? What would you say to that leader?
For that, I mean, it didn't start off with a think week, to be honest with you. It started off with a massage. It started off with a meditation for 5 minutes. It started off with finding the windshield time to think and reflect, like everybody else has access to. The question is, we tend to use that time to get into a podcast and listen to music and news and talk on the phone. I actually chose to just create some stillness, even if it is in the car, right? And so I realized, during that time 25 years ago, I realized my best think time guess where? It was actually in the car, or it was on a flight, but I have no distractions. I don't have to
Right.
watch a movie. I can sit there and do the think time right there. And I am on a flight to India, and I'll be on a plane, depending on how you fly, for many, many hours. I'll do my think time right there. And so I realized, and that's what my realization was, that, hey, I think so much better when I don't have this noise around me. I don't have to see my emails. I don't have to have text messages. I don't have a phone ringing all the time. I don't have any action to take. No one's waiting for a deliverable for me. And I felt that was a thing. So I actually converted that time from that flight to a think week. Like, how do I create the same environment for a longer period to achieve a more lasting and more intentional result?
So you
Right. So that
started small, right?
it
You,
all
it
started off small.
started small,
Yeah, it
and
all
then it
started off small.
grew because you found what worked. You
Yeah.
used the framework, you modeled some masters. You said you educated yourself about what worked for other people, and then you brought that into your life, right?
Right, that's right. I mean, everything is rinse and repeat. I don't think I ever got any original idea other than the fact that I took the pain to understand what is that I was needing to be able to get intentional and get clarity in my life. And that I realized was flight time, windshield time gave me that realization that that was amazing. I was, and I now when I'm driving out of town, I don't. If I'm driving alone, I don't have any music on. I'm not listening to any podcasts. I'm actually thinking.
Yeah,
I
right. And so if you're listening to this, find the time, build, there's a great episode Jim Estel was on, episode, and you can look that up. But Jim Estel talks about the power of while, and that's what you're talking about. While you're doing something, do this too. You know,
Mhm.
he talks about having meetings while walking as being a very simple example of that. I want to get a walk in. I need to meet this person. While I'm walking, I'm going to do this. So you're using the power of while I'm going somewhere, I'm going to use that time for thinking.
That's
While I'm
correct.
traveling on an airplane, I'm going to use this time for thinking. And
Yeah, walking the
then
dog,
you
whatever.
had that amuse bouche, which then grew your appetite
Yeah.
for it, and you found other ways to get more out of your framework, right?
Yeah, I mean, I actually had I mean, I still have that. I go for a 30 minutes to a 1 hour massage every week. Not because I need physical massage. I need that quiet time to distill things while I'm getting, additional assistance in really getting the massage to help me relax. But really, I actually just walk in and I get that for that reason. Is that just there's so much around you, you need to process it. You need time to really process it. And I can now do that in a few ways. One is, of course, the Think Week, which I do every quarter. And then I also do massages or windshield time or flight time, or even, I take the energy to do meditation, midday meditation, to be able to process where I am in a moment. And then writing, journaling is part of my journey. I write for anywhere between 30 minutes to 45 minutes every morning, right?
Yeah. Do you block that time off on your calendar?
It's called the morning routine, and then they have an afternoon routine, and then have an evening routine. I have three routines on my things, pretty routined out here. But the
Yeah.
thing is that allows me to create that date with myself to be able to achieve that. Just creating the time blocks and dates.
Yeah, so I think that's really neat because we stumbled right into new habits,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so your new habits, you say new habits lead to new results. Why is that equal to each other?
So I feel, if whatever you're doing is good. If you continue doing that, you always same habits will lead to same results in my mind, right? So new
Mhm.
habits will actually introduce new ways of doing things and new time or new, exercises to be able to get somewhere. So that's the idea. Is like, hey, new habits. How? So I started creating a goal. Hey, I'm going to experiment with a new habit this quarter. And what is that habit, right? So that kind of thing. So I feel habits actually set you free.
Yeah. So you said on a
Routines.
quarterly basis, you say you're going to experiment with a new habit.
Mhm.
What does that mean to you? What are you saying? Because experiment means you're going to, test it out. How are you testing it out? What does that look like?
So remember during the pandemic, I don't know whether you and I were in the same room at that time. What you used to do is get up in the morning at 4:30 and try 1 hour when everybody's sleeping, and we would get together and create accountability by having three people in the room on Zoom and just focus on the most difficult thing and most important thing in the morning. That was a habit. Getting up in the morning was an important habit to do to be able to achieve that. Making sure I commit myself to do it and do it every day. Making sure that I'm not letting my other people, let them down by not being there. And those are kind of things. Being in EO and being and reading and listening to other podcasts at times, you actually get to see what other people are trying and doing and is working for them. You know, to see if that works for me and does that stick for me. So that's the time I actually pick up one little nugget and then say I'm going to try and do it myself. And I may give up on it in the middle of the quarter, but at least I tried. It did not work for me, or it did work for me.
Yeah. So how do you measure whether it works for you or not?
You set the measurements and figure out what is the success look like. I mean, I think you and I are strategic coach as well, and so I put together an impact filter and figure out, hey, what do I want success to be, at least as I comprehended it right at this point, and then how do I create intentionality around it and see if it works. And if it doesn't get me where I need to abandon that and stop wasting my time doing it. So it's about
Right.
intentionality, being very clear up front, and maybe it's me. Maybe it's not the habit. Maybe it doesn't work for me because it doesn't go gel with who I am and and what I'm going through right now. But at least I gave it a try.
Yeah, yeah. And by giving it a try, you mean you
Experiment.
actually did it for a period of time, assessed the outcome. The outcome wasn't there, it wasn't giving you the new results you were looking for,
Right.
and then you said, okay, didn't work.
Mhm.
Do, do you feel um so somebody out there is going to say, oh, I don't want to do something, it's not going to work, I'm going to feel bad about it, I will have wasted all this time. Is that how you feel when you discover something
Oh,
worked or?
No, because I've actually tried to master the word no, right? When is no for you? So a lot of times we make decisions and then we get emotionally involved in that decision and we don't have we don't have the ability and probably the strength to say no to some things, right? I said someone, so that actually allows you to play with that muscle and say, you know what, when something is not serving you well, you just say no and walk away, and it's okay. So how do you distance yourself from a decision? And it could be a habit or maybe a decision itself, and it's not serving you well. You've got to say no to it and liberate yourself from that entrapment, so to speak.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of like the great quote, right? It's not that I failed; I found another way that didn't work,
That's right.
and it just didn't work, and
That's
it's
right.
okay. So new habits lead to new results, but every single time you do a new habit, it's going to lead to a new result. You have to have a measurement and an understanding of what winning looks like to know whether that new result is one that you want or one that you don't, right?
That's right. That is
Right.
correct. And that's where you get intentional, right, about that.
Exactly, exactly. So let's talk about the last equation at the bottom, which is self-reflection equals self-mastery.
That's right.
Why is that important?
So for me, that's important because, we need to figure out what's working, like, simple exercise. What's working, what's not working, what do I need to stop, what do I need to improve? Simple exercise, right, as an example. But how do you reflect on your day, and your end of the day exercise, journaling yourself? Hey, what was my gratitude journal? Hey, what did I achieve this week? And what am I or today? What went well? What did not go well? What could I change if I were to change something? What do I change about myself, right? And so that self-reflection, and then reading a quote from Stoic a book, or maybe reading a mantra from Hinduism, allows you to reflect and so figure out, hey, how does that serve me, right? And that time to reflect and to go and know yourself allows you to really gain more clarity of who you are as a being, and then get clarity of who what you're made up of. And so that reflection is important, and that only comes through journaling and really taking time to give that. So that's part of my evening routine that I do every evening. And I remember my dad. I used to see him by his bedside before going to bed, and he would just put his hand on his eyes, and he would just be still for 5 minutes. And I used to ask my dad, what did he just do? And he says, nothing. I just reflect my entire day in 5 minutes. And I didn't understand what that meant. Not that I do that, but I have my own little routine where I can do that, and I do that typically before going to bed.
Amazing. Um, so when you do your evening routine, you
Mhm.
say this sort of self-reflection moment leads to mastery. Why does reflection lead to mastery?
Yeah, so you need to figure out, self-reflection leads to understanding, and understanding how do you maintain a peak performance for yourself, right? A lot of introspection, a lot of clarity, a lot of decisions, that go in through your mind, and you're doing the self reflection just to help you become better every day, right? What is that one thing I need to do? And that's what you're taking away from it. Hey, what is that one thing I'm going to do today that's going to make me 1% better, or better? So that's what I'm really doing this for. How do I create peak performance, and I constantly become better with every day's efforts.
It's I think that what is really striking me about your story, Rishi, is that you're approaching every part of this with a humility and curiosity that opens the door for you to find that one thing, right?
Mhm.
Um, and what I also think is really interesting is that initially you said that you were avoiding your curiosity and focused on doing. Later on, it's almost counterintuitive, right? Like if you're doing, you think you'd be really super successful. But now you're saying, no, 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 I stop. I'm quiet. I'm curious. I'm leaning into these things. What happened to your success?
I think as I started doing this exercise, I felt that I was able to break the ceilings that I'm setting for myself. My self-talk, was not holding me back. My self-doubt never, was coming in the way. And if it was, I was trying to really dive deep into those things in my own quiet time to be able to resolve that. So the success, I was constantly becoming more successful over time, because then less is more. Started
Right.
doing things, and I started doing them better. And I started becoming intentional, and I was able to give more clarity to the people around me. I was able to give them a better, better direction if I need to do, and delegate better, and do less myself and get more people to do more for me. Right.
And part of that, like I want to go back to this framework, because if you're clear and confident about the outcomes and you know the habits that are going to lead to the results,
Mhm.
you're able to say more clearly, hey, here's the thing that I need some help with. Can you
Mhm.
help me with it? And that empowers your team members to actually go to the right place because you're clear on what you need, right? Is
Yeah,
that what
I'm clear
happened
with
for
what I
you?
need. Another thing that was holding me back was asking for help. Now, because I have the clarity, I can say, hey, I don't have that capability. My team doesn't have the capability. Somebody else in the world has the capability. Now I can ask for it. Because before that, I would just say, I'll create the capability. I'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. And that's now serving me very well, right? So that's the thing about it. That also leads to the element of being able to ask for help, be more deliberate, be more supportive, and then find the who has done it before to help you get there faster.
Yeah, I think this is really powerful. And Rishi, I know you're a humble guy. You've achieved some significant success, and you influence a lot of people globally with the work that you do. And it's really clear that you do that on purpose. Like it is very aligned with who you are. Your frameworks are brilliant, and I want to thank you for sharing them with me.
Mhm.
You have a shout out today. Who would you like to shout out?
I'm part of EO, and I feel that a lot of my journey evolved by being part of entrepreneurs organization. I felt that being around people that were like-minded allowed me to really go on this journey and become smoother about this journey. I mean, really, I got deliberate about this only because of the fact that I had this group of friends that I made over time, which I would now call family, that got me there. So, and within that EO, a group of like many thousand members, my own forum, is that I want to give a shout out to my forum, because they actually challenged me. They hold me, they keep me grounded, and they help me achieve more by just being themselves and be great listeners, and then be able to tell me when I'm giving them I'm blindsided, or I'm just giving my BS to them, right? They just call me out of my shit. So that's the idea. And I feel like I need to give shout out to my forum, because what they do, not a lot of times your spouse doesn't do that for you. Sometimes your employees definitely not do that for you, because they're still afraid to tell you that. Your friends also don't tell you that. But EO, I think they have the way of communication that allows us to communicate better, why they challenge you through their words. And so I would like to give a shout out to my great forum.
That's awesome. And if you're listening, everyone deserves to be in a forum of peers. If you don't know the concept of forum, if you are an entrepreneur, certainly look up Entrepreneurs Organization. If you're not an entrepreneur, if you're a leader, if you're a difference maker, there are forums available for everyone. Everyone deserves to be in a mastermind where they can be supported, but also learn what it really means to give support in
Mhm.
an unbiased experience sharing way. Rishi, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation.
It was.